What if the hardest part of living with ADHD isn't the distraction, but the quiet belief that you're not enough? In this deeply honest conversation with Alan Brown, we explore the link between ADHD and low self-esteem and why so many ADHDers end up fighting a harsher inner critic than almost anyone else in the room. But this episode isn't about staying stuck in the problem. It's about how changing the narrative can change your identity and how reclaiming your self-esteem can transform your entire life. So, hi, Alan. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Do you think you could just tell my listeners a little bit about what you do and how you help people?
Sure. Well, I'm a former advertising guy from New York City who was diagnosed at 37, struggled for many years undiagnosed. When I was diagnosed, I ran out and bought, I was so happy. This was not like, oh, I'm broken. It was, thank goodness, this explains so much. And I remember running out and buying like 4 or 5 books on adult ADHD, which there were a fair number back then. This was 97. And then I got home with the books, and like every book that I buy, I start flipping into the pages, and then I realized, hey, I can't read that well. Especially books that don't have pictures or bullet points even. So I just got the idea to create something for ADHD teens and adults that was interactive, included video, et cetera, which is all commonplace now. But back then, there was really nothing else out there. So eventually in 2012, I launched ADD Crusher, which is a video audio virtual coach program. That's kind of what I've been doing in addition to coaching. And I coach both ADHD adults as well as other coaches, primarily ADHD coaches. I help them with business building and productivity. And I've written a best-selling book called Zen and the Art of Productivity. And most of what I do is group coaching. So that's most of my days are spent working with folks just like the folks in our audience, and helping them to be happier in their lives, get more stuff done, be less frustrated, et cetera. And it's a lot of fun to do. I'm happy to do it.
Oh, thanks, Alan. I really resonate with what you said when you first got diagnosed, that it wasn't a sort of, oh no thing. It was more like a, yay, this explains everything. It's exactly how I felt. It was like, I was ecstatic. I was like, wow. There is a reason. So it's like, I really relate to that. And actually that brings me on to what we're going to talk about today, because I know that you are, really talking about self-esteem at the moment. And so I wanted to dive deep into that with you about self-esteem. And I know that, my self-esteem was completely rock bottom, basically, when I was diagnosed at 50, because I didn't know that I had undiagnosed ADHD. And so it is huge. It's a huge topic, isn't it, for ADHDers?
It is. And I think it's a growing topic, because I think we're realizing just how much our own ADHD is both the cause of our low self-esteem. And I'm going to share a little bit about my own story, if I may, to get at that, but also how it makes our lives worse. And how our ADHD has fueled low self-esteem, and the low self-esteem fuels more extreme issues with our lives. So I look forward to talking about this.
Hello, I am just going to pop in here and let you know about my group coaching program, which is called The Academy. The Academy is an inspiring and supportive space where I coach like-minded ADHDers. We explore everything about living with ADHD, and you will receive personal coaching and support directly from me. I've been through the challenges of ADHD myself, and I love sharing the lessons that I've learned to help make your life easier. So I'd love for you to come and join our amazing ADHD community and learn and grow together. There's a link down below to join, and I hope to see you soon. And I'd love you to share your journey. But can I just ask, and this may spur that conversation, what got you interested in talking about this in the first place, and the ADHD kind of self-esteem connection as you see it?
I've always had an awareness of lower self esteem, pretty much, and it wasn't really until just fairly recently I was asked to write an article for Attitude magazine. Some of your listeners may have heard of
Hmm.
Attitude magazine's ADDITUDE, Attitude as an ADD, and it was about the pain of growing up with ADHD, and my ADHD was undiagnosed at the time, of course. And so, in writing the article, I sort of broke it into different sort of chapters of my life, or different identities that I had growing up. And the first one I remember as a young kid was difficulty with relationships. I was the outsider. My ADHD and my impulsiveness and my so many of us just have difficulty with relationship and reading people, etc. So I had difficulty forming friendships, and then partially as a result of that, I was the class clown. I was definitely compensating. I was using that to make friends, or solidify relationships, and in a way, I was also masking by being the clown. And part of being the clown means getting into a little bit of trouble. And there was my sort of early teens into my deeper teens. I was dummy. That's what my father called me. My father was an alcoholic and undiagnosed. God bless you, Dad, wherever you are. But um, it's I seemed like I was screwing up every day, according to him. And so it was dummy, dummy. Why did you do this, dummy? And that became something that I called myself in my head up until my deep into my adult life. So I was dummy for a while, and then I became the approval seeker, especially in my adolescence. And growing up, and I kind of hung around with the tough guys in New Jersey, northern Jersey, outside of Newark, New Jersey, and that made for more trouble and me screwing up more. So it was even more loudly called the dummy. Uh, and and then getting into my young adult and professional life, I became the people pleaser because I was so sensitive to screwing up, to doing the wrong thing, to misreading things that I figured if I can just please people, this is very subconscious, this all happened. As long as other people around me are happy, then I won't be in trouble. But now, if you fast forward to me right now, I am overly deferential. I'm always like overly thanking people and things. I am afraid to ask for things. This is a weird one, but I know some of us can identify with this. Everyone around me, whether it's a doctor or a cashier or a professor or a complete stranger, they all feel above me somehow in authority, integrity, and worth. I had a successful career in the advertising business and the two successful startups, but I never felt like I was the smart person in the room. I've always walked into the meeting and thought, well, I'm going to be the least smart in this room. And then there was this very strange thing that still sort of is back there somewhere, that just feeling that maybe I'm not really a good person. I mean, this is uh, this is just a not a pleasant way of being or thinking about oneself. And is it any wonder I've struggled with poor boundaries, perfectionism, fear of failure, etc., and that results in procrastination, which we're going to get into some of the more practical sides of what this all means. So that got me super interested in this, and I ended up doing earlier this year a webinar for Attitude Magazine that attracted 15,000 people. So we know it's a hot topic. So that's what got me into it, and I look forward to sharing more about this topic.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I felt like really sad for that little boy then that called himself a
Mm.
dummy.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it didn't come from you; it came from your dad. But then we internalized those voices, don't
Yes.
we? Yeah, yeah. That is it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because I think we hear so many stories like that. That I called myself stupid my whole life, so it's very similar actually
Yep.
until I was 50. And that's when I was diagnosed. So I really do relate actually, because my brain was different. I thought I was stupid because of like
Hmm.
some simple things that I thought other people could do, I struggled with. And as we know, don't we, Alan, that is the nature of ADHD, is that actually our brains are capable of amazing, incredible things, but
Hmm.
actually the more kind of mundane, boring things we could struggle with. But then I know, I think for me, I put that connection there, me thinking I was stupid.
I think that's the single most important thing about understanding your own self-esteem, where it came from, and what you can do about it. And I'm going to, if we have time, I'd like to share a couple of simple solutions to start getting you on your way. But that's really what it's about. Is we've got these brilliant brains that some of the most amazing people on the planet are neurodiverse, if not ADHD. And yet they may have spent a good amount of their lives thinking, well, I'm a dummy, I'm stupid, something, I'm broken, I can never be successful, etc. And we have to climb out of this low self-esteem stuckness that we have. And you mentioned at the top what I call the low self-esteem, the ADHD low self-esteem connection. And I'm
Mm.
glad you mentioned that because I just want to share a few statistics for you. Um, First of all, adults with ADHD do have lower levels of self-esteem compared to the general population. That includes also children and adolescents as well. The more severe one's ADHD is, the lower one's self-esteem is likely to be. And on the sort of the plus side, undiagnosed ADHD adults will suffer more from low self-esteem than those who are diagnosed. So if you have been diagnosed with ADHD, you've got an opportunity now to strengthen your self esteem much more than those who are still out there undiagnosed don't and have no idea, like you and me before we were diagnosed had no idea what was going on. So that's the importance of this connection between low self esteem and ADHD.
Yeah, I that really makes sense, doesn't it? Because we both, like we said, we both shared that when we had our diagnosis, we were like, wow, it makes sense. And so already there's a big piece of that, almost like we're validating ourselves. Like, oh, there's a reason why I've struggled with this. It doesn't mean I'm actually a failure. There's my brain is different. But I do think, and I don't know if you've seen this, Alan, with some of your clients as well, that even though we can know that about having the diagnosis, and I totally think, for me, I'd never take that away from myself, particularly
Right.
that really validated my experience. I still had this belief, the beliefs are subconscious and they run deep, don't they? So even though we can know there's this diagnosis, there's this subconscious little voice that's still there. Well, not such a little voice, to be fair, quite a big voice that still kind of is telling us you're a failure, or you're letting people down, you're unreliable, these things.
Well, this is what you're getting at. Really, is the crux of all this, which is with low self-esteem, whether we've been diagnosed or not, whether we've had success or not, there are still these disempowering stories that come from our past. I am a dummy or I am stupid, even after you've been diagnosed. It's still in there. And these have all been pre-programmed. And here's the thing. When we sit down to work on a difficult task, let's say, and even if we've been diagnosed and even perhaps treated successfully with meds and or coaching and or whatever else, we will still, when we have a challenging task in front of us, we will still revert to our old stories, the ones that say, well, you can't do this, you're going to fail, you're going to look silly. If you send out this email, they're going to hit reply and say, how dare you say the stupid thing you said, etc. So what we're going to get into here is the importance of altering our stories or acknowledging first the stories we have. So Let me do a quick with this. Let me do a quick rundown of where our self esteem comes from and why it is worse for us. So, for instance, our DNA is responsible for some of our low self esteem. It is to some degree heritable, 30, 40% or so heritability, not as heritable as ADHD, which has a 70 to 80% heritability rate. But when you put the two together, it's kind of a double whammy. We are subject to both of these genetic predispositions potentially, and when those two come together, wow. But also, it's our environment, our family dynamics, whether we got positive feedback or whether we were called dummy or stupid. And it's worse for us because we will have gotten more negative feedback over the course of our childhood and early adulthood. Social interactions were seen as different. If we had great, strong friendships and loving relationships, etc., how our love life went, particularly in our teen years. Those things can be self-esteem boosters, or they can be self-esteem destroyers. And we, as ADDers, it's worse for us because we are always seen as different. We act different. Again, my first recollection of an identity of mine was the outsider, right? Then there are life events, getting promotions, winning awards, certainly are good things for our self-esteem, but not succeeding, getting fired from a job, etc. These things just ding, ding, ding our self-esteem. And then there's also mental health conditions, depression, anxiety, other mental disorders. And it's worse for us because we are more likely to have one or more conditions like depression or bipolar or anxiety, et cetera. So it's not a pretty picture. But there's also then, and this comes back to our stories, there's also negative self-talk. Negative self-talk further lowers your self-esteem, and positive self-talk can improve your self-esteem. And I'm not talking about woo-woo, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, kind of I win the trophy even though all I did was show up. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. We're talking about legitimate stories that we hold about ourselves and legitimate stories that we can create about ourselves. But we end up, it's worse for us because our stories are worse for us because they tend to be negative stories, and we tend to engage in more cognitive disorders. Like the negativity bias. Everyone experiences a negativity bias, but we have experienced a disproportionate number of negatives in our lives. Black and white thinking is a way for us to sort of make sense of the world. But that is also, it's either I'm smart or I'm stupid, I'm great or I'm awful, etc. A whole bunch of other cognitive distortions that we make worse or we experience more severely, like catastrophizing, et cetera, because of our ADHD and our low self-esteem. So, and then all of this has tremendous costs. And I don't know if you want to touch on this. Some of it will kind of be obvious, but I figure I'll take a little break here and just see if you had any thoughts to add to that.
Well, yeah, actually, it was just I will come back to the costs, absolutely. But yeah, it was just reminding me of a book that I'm not sure if you've read or listened to, but it's called "Your Brain Is Not Broken" by Tamara Rossier. And
Yes.
I remember reading in that book, and that it really resonated with what you've just said, actually. That she says that it's almost like it's like a coping mechanism in a way, this very severe inner critic that we have. Because and I never saw it like that before, and I think that's exactly what you're speaking to about how actually there is a kind of almost like a neurological reason why our inner critic is stronger. And she explains it in a way which I think is great, because I love analogies, that neurotypical people is like they have a butler. That's their executive function, a butler that says, "Here you are, sir, here's your briefcase, don't forget to take it to work, and
Yeah.
here's your keys, madam." And neurodiverse or ADHD adults, we don't ever have the butler. He went to sleep on the job or he never turned up. And so,
Hmm.
because we don't have that executive function um, like neurotypical people do, we have to
Hmm.
rely on the more limbic part of our brain, which is, she describes it again as an analogy of an angry neighbor that comes out and screams at you. Like,
Yeah.
so can you imagine you're going out to your car and this neighbor comes out every time going, "What the hell are you doing? You're late again. What's wrong with you?" Like that kind of thing. Like, and that is
Yep.
literally the only way we've ever got to know how to get ourselves to do anything, because it does actually work sometimes. I mean, it's exhausting, and after a while, it's not sustainable, as we know, because that self-esteem is another, yeah, it's a nail in the coffin of our self-esteem, isn't it? But I think
Yeah.
originally, like when we're younger, that actually does, we kind of tend to rely on it in a way, like as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it's the way we're wired, and
Yeah.
we in a way we rely on the negativity bias and these distortions to fuel us. Like, I am so terrible, I have to now do this.
Yeah.
I am going to screw up, so I'm going to protect myself by not sticking my neck out. So now we really are. You've segued nicely into some of the costs. So think about how we protect ourselves with perfectionism. It keeps our, unfortunately, it keeps our world small and our possibilities fewer. But if we can, there's a great quote from Brene Brown that some of us have heard: if I look perfect, live perfect, and work perfect, I can avoid criticism, blame, or ridicule. So you think about the cost of, not having that butler and instead just having the screaming neighbor. You're going to seek protection from that screaming neighbor until you absolutely have to act on it, or do something. We protect ourselves by not taking risks, right? Missed opportunities and learning. Think about where, for someone like you and me, and you were diagnosed later in life than I was, diagnosed at 50, you were. Think about what opportunities may have been missed by your lack of confidence, by your feeling stupid, et cetera. So the costs are significant. We don't feel we deserve things. How about that? And so we end up saying yes to others. We say no to our own needs. This is that lack of boundaries that I mentioned before. Yes, yes, yesing others and saying no to ourselves. We don't live our values. We don't do what's right for us. And really, the bottom line is we are just kind of self sabotaging and screwing ourselves over daily with this low self esteem. So, and there's and not to, because I want to get into the some solutions in a
Yeah,
second,
it's not
but I
all
just
doom and
want to
gloom.
share. Say again.
I was going to say it's not all doom and gloom. We know
No,
there
it's
are
not. No,
some
and
solutions.
it's funny, when I was giving this webinar earlier this year. I had to pause and say, "Hey, listen, I know this is not exactly the feel good presentation of the year, but hang in there with me, will you?" Just to put a little bit of icing on this cake of woe, I'm just going to cite a little bit of research here because it's important for us to know. So, lower self esteem results in lower quality of life, psychological difficulties, lower job satisfaction, lower relationship satisfaction, lower life satisfaction, and a higher risk for suicidal ideation. So I just have to put that out there. That very important but sad fact.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Actually, that's really brought something up for me, because even though I know we're saying this cake of woe or the icing, um, actually, I think that people hearing this is the opposite, because if they've suffered their whole life thinking there's something wrong with them and not actually realizing that their self-esteem could be lower because of these invisible differences in a way. And I think that's another big factor, isn't it? These things people can't see. And so it's even more reason why we kind of beat ourselves up a bit if we don't see these things and we don't, other people don't see them. So actually, I think, yes, we can say it sounds like a bit of a tale of woe, but actually it it's very validating. I
Yeah.
think it already would boost somebody's self-esteem to actually be able to see this or to hear
No,
this. So I
I
just
think
wanted to sort of add that in.
this is a really powerful point that you make. Well, I'm so glad that you made that observation, because the reality is that the path to improve self-esteem begins with just increasing our awareness of the whole thing, of the causes, the manifestations, and the costs. As I may have sort of alluded to this before earlier, but there's something known as Kidlin's law, which states that if you can describe a problem clearly, if you can understand the problem clearly, it is halfway solved. Now, that's way optimistic, but that really is step one in starting to improve our self esteem. So, you've made a brilliant observation there. The second step in improving our self esteem is to recognize our stories that I spoke about earlier and their power over us, and to recognize that when we are sitting down and try to work on something, when we're just thinking about something, our negative past stories that have been banged into our brains and are stuck there, the dummy, the I am stupid, etc., and I can't do this, I'll screw this up, etc., our brain has a preference for making sense of things in terms of those past stories, those negative stories, which have a predominance in our synapses, in our neural pathways, or neural linkages, as one researcher calls it. So when this is why we're constantly having more negative thoughts than the average Joe or Jane. And when we're going to a negative story about ourselves, I can't, I screw this up all the time, I don't know how to do this, etc. They're not going to like me, etc. Or I need to people please because otherwise they won't like me. All those negative stories will have a preference for our brain. And the only way to change that preference is to change our stories, to start to develop new, better stories. I'm going to give you a quick bit of research about how that works. And then I'd like to, and I'm hoping we have time, I'd like to share a couple of little exercises that anyone can do to start building better stories. And I'm not talking about rah rah, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. It's not any of that. It's real research based stuff. So there's this classic piece of research that was done with first generation college students. These are students whose parents did not go to college, so they tended to be more working class, et cetera. And the statistics are very clear. These first generation students will have a lower grade point average and will be more likely to drop out or fail out than their non first generation peers, those whose parents did go to college, right? And so researchers found, of course, that they were, on balance, they were maintaining negative stories. Well, I don't belong here. I'm not as smart as my peers. I shouldn't have to ask for help, et cetera. And what they did with a group of these first generation students, a sample of them, is they helped them understand new stories, that it was actually expected that they asked for additional help from their professors, that their class background was actually of benefit to the class discussions, et cetera. And that their issue was not one of intelligence, but just of their own perceptions, et cetera, et cetera. And so what happened after the first year is that, as always, the grade point average of those first generations, of all first generation students, were lower, and there were more dropouts and failures than their peers whose parents did go to college. But among those first generation college students who were given new stories, there was no difference. There was absolutely no performance difference between them and their peers whose parents did go to college. So that was just a matter of changing a few stories. They were more likely to seek help. They were more likely to engage with their peers, first generation or not, to work in study groups, et cetera. And they were more open to asking questions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a little bit of research to give you confidence on how this changing of stories can be so powerful. So I figure I'll
Yeah.
pause here before I share a couple of little exercises that I invite everyone to give a try to.
Yeah, I love that. That really is great kind of evidence, isn't it, about the power of stories? But yeah, I think let's do the solutions, because we have spent a long time building up to that, haven't we? So Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say how, how can we improve our self-esteem then as
So,
ADHDers?
yeah. So there are two exercises, and the first one is some coaches will be familiar with, whether under this name or another, but it's called. I learned it as the Seven Stories, and I learned it from an executive coach many years ago. It's something similar is taught in where I was trained as a coach, and some of the folks out there will say this will sound a little familiar, but what you do is you sit down for, you just block off, say, an hour. You can actually start writing a little bit right now if you like, but you sit down for an hour, let's say, and you identify the 20 or 25 things that you are most proud of in your life. And this can be anything from your childhood right up to last week. And the thing here, in the thing that makes this exercise work, and I'll tell you the rest of how it goes in a sec, but we tend to think of traumatic offenses strictly negative, right? Combat, assault, a horrible accident or illness, et cetera, death. But there are also positive traumatic events. And these can impact us just as much as negative traumatic events. So, when we are writing these 20 to 25 things, they can be big, small, or anywhere in between. They can be from childhood to last week or anywhere in between. These are positive traumatic events. Um, and what you do is you just identify these things that you're most proud of, and don't think too much as, well, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. Oh, wow. When I was 7 years old, I did this, et cetera, et cetera. When I was 17, I did this. It could be an award. It could be how you helped someone. It could be a business you started, or the fact that you raised a special needs child, anything that you are proud of. And then what you do is you step back and you circle the top seven, your top seven stories, because you can't do the whole exercise for all your stories. So you just want to get the top seven. And then for each of those, you write one paragraph, 3, 4 sentences. And this is important. You might want to write this down. But in that paragraph, you're going to describe 3 things. One, what is it you did? What is it that you did? And then how did you do it? All right. What were the strengths or the values that you called upon, or the talents that you called upon to do that? And then why were you so proud of it? Why in particular were you so proud of it? So those 3 questions. And then what you do is, with those 7 stories, and you have them written out, you then scan them for similarities, words, phrases that appear across multiple stories. And what happens is you see evidence refuting some of your disempowering beliefs. You create new beliefs about what you're capable of, because we forget about the good things that we did. We forget about the things we're proud of because we're constantly reminded of the things we're not proud of every day. Yeah. So you're creating new beliefs, and then you form new neural pathways that support your new positive stories, so that you are more and more likely to call up a positive story when you have a challenge before you, instead of calling up the dummy or the stupid story, right? So very simple exercise. Hopefully you've written down just a few things. Maybe a few things pop in your head. Please do write them down. But maybe sometime over the weekend, you just give yourself an hour or so to just sit and play around with this exercise.
I love that, Alan. It's bringing up 2 things for me. One of them is I did a very similar thing when I trained with ADKA.
Yep. It's
And
called Magical Moments on the Mountain, right?
That's it. And also, I think there was a rainbow list, which, yeah, I didn't personally love the name myself,
Yeah.
but it did the job. And what was actually really telling is I was with a group of other ADHD adults, all training to be coaches. Some of them were already coaches, some of them were already therapists. And we all found it so difficult. And it just showed we all went in, our self-esteem was kind of rock bottom, really. Found it difficult to even think of these things to write to start with. But actually, the more we did, it kind of started to sort of almost like, I don't know, like dig into something that was that hidden underneath. Like we'd put like stuff, like some sort of rock there that we couldn't get to. And then the rock started to crumble away. We start to remember these things and see. And I remember having a profound shift in that coach training from doing that very exercise. Actually, it's not. It was a similar exercise, and not exactly the one you said. I love the one you've shared actually, even more so because
Yeah.
of seeing the, like you said, the kind of the link between this. You start to see what your strengths are, what you are really
Yes.
proud of. Yeah, and circling the words. I loved that.
And I love that you mentioned that you'd done this exercise and that it was very difficult to find the positive stories. And that's part of the point of it because it's demonstrating how you don't have these at your disposal, even though the stories are out there. But once you spend time with it, and this is why I invite folks, this is not something you sit down and do in 10 minutes. You really give yourself at least an hour just to start in on them. And maybe it takes 2 sessions to do it because you will find the stories. And remember, they don't have to they don't have to, you won a gold medal at the Olympics. Well, you could also win a gold medal, I suppose. But it's not about that big stuff. It's about things that you've done that you are proud of.
Yeah,
And among them, you will find small things and bigger things. So
yeah,
this is
I love it.
really key.
Well, like you were saying earlier about how our brain wants to almost like prove us right. So if our story is we're stupid, we're looking for the evidence. Our brain is looking for that evidence all the time.
Yes.
And so if
Yes.
we're changing the story, then we start to look for the evidence for the new story. So it's
What is that?
reinforcing
Yeah.
a better story.
That is a cognitive distortion. It's called, what's it? Help me out. When
Oh,
we look for evidence to support what we already believe.
yeah. I can't
Um,
remember what it is, but I do know
Cognitive
what you mean. Yeah.
something. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and that's
Our
true.
brain
That's
wants
a
to be
great
right.
point that you made.
Yeah. It wants to be
Yeah.
right. So if we've got a
Yes.
story, it
You
wants to,
see,
yeah,
I'm
be right.
stupid. See, I
Yeah.
told you I'm stupid.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to share this other exercise.
Yes,
And
please.
this is really neat. Now, this comes from a gentleman named Jim Lair. He's a world renowned sports mindset coach. He has coached over 17 number one athletes in the world. And he was, just as an example, and he's researched this. He's got over 100,000 cases of how to change someone's story. So this guy is the real deal. So he gives an example of a pro golfer that he was working with who he hated putting, and he knew that if he could be a better putter, if he could be a great putter, he could be at the top of the PGA Tour. The PGA being the Professional Golfers Association. But the story the golfer was telling himself was, well, I just don't seem to have the ability to be a good putter. I've always had trouble putting, and this is my greatest weakness. So Laird tells him, you can't get to where you want to go with that story. Here's the new story that will work for you. And so he helps the golf pro rewrite the story. And so I'm going to read the story, the new story, in the voice of the golfer, which is, if I look at my stats, I'm one of the poor putters on the PGA Tour. That's true. Now remember, this is not woo woo. He's admitting I'm not a great a putter. But he says, I'm an athlete. And I have to tell you, one day I'm going to become one of the best putters, if not the best putter on tour. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm going to devote more energy and more effort to it. And I'm going to make this the most important part of my game. And I'm going to love doing it. And every time I see a green, I'm going to light up and say, fantastic. I have another chance to practice my putting and to get it right. See, he's not doing this, I'm a great putter. I'm a great putter. You see, it's not baloney. This is real. This is why this stuff works. And he says, if I miss a putt, even an easy 3-footer for birdie, I'll simply say, thank God I got that out of my system. Now I'm going to get better. Now, Lair notes that this story rewriting is classic growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, right? And I've been using this for some time now with clients of mine in my group coaching. One of my clients has been fired, I think, from 3 jobs in a row. And we helped change her story. And she did all the work. I just pointed her in the right direction. And she is now succeeding in this 4th job. And she actually just got a review that was positive. But I want to share I want to share a case study of another client that I've worked with who she was struggling with maintaining her healthy diet and also struggling with procrastination and perfectionism at work, on work projects. And she didn't have confidence, et cetera. So we articulated together her disempowering story. And hers was, in social situations, I don't adhere to my healthy diet guidelines because I feel overly self-conscious in public. I worry about being seen as different and therefore judged. So I go with the flow, which I then regret, not just because I've eaten unhealthy foods, but because I'm violating my value of showing up for me. And that's a core value of hers, which we had uncovered earlier in another exercise similar to the 7 stories, but it's something called Be Do Have. All right. But here's her enabling news story that she wrote. I haven't been great about showing up for myself, which is a core value of mine. But because it's a core value and because I know it can help me succeed in better self care, better job performance, and more, I'm going to be someone who lives that value forcefully. So whenever I'm invited to a social gathering or handed a tricky, highly visible project at work, I'm going to light up and say, here's an opportunity for me to live that core value of me showing up for me. And on those occasions where I slip back into worrying about what others will think or being perfectionist at work, I'll make note of it, dust myself off, and be grateful for the reminder that, hey, I'm not quite there yet, but I'll get there. It's a pretty good news story. And it's not baloney. It's all very realistic. She's just saying, putting that negative stuff into a new positive story. It's not rocket science, but it is brain science.
Yeah.
So I
Oh, I
hope
love
this
that.
all made sense.
I love that. It's not rocket science, it's brain science. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I really love that. So I just want to finish though, because we haven't got very long, but I just want to sort of ask you, how can people make sure that these exercises actually really do make a difference? Is there a way that, because with ADHD, again, we've got that story, oh, I'm not consistent. And, how can they, is there anything you could say for that?
I thank you for that. That's the golden question, really, because we all know how it is. And we watch a great podcast, or we watch a great webinar, or we purchase a course, and we get through the material, and then we go, wow, that was great. This one thing was pretty cool. And then we forget about it, right? And then we don't have any results to show for what we learned. So what we want to do, first of all, is set an appointment with yourself for some time, maybe this weekend, to just do one of the exercises. Maybe you start with the 7 stories. Just do that for yourself. Put it in your calendar right now while you're thinking about it. Let's not just make this, wow, that was great, I'm going to do that. You know it's not going to happen, but if you put it in your calendar, you've got a 50%, or actually you're doubling the odds that it'll actually happen. That's the other piece of research. But here's the most important thing. Once you've done some developing some new stories, identifying things that you are proud of and why you're proud of them, you need to have recurring reminders, of course, in your calendar to revisit them. So maybe something pops up once a week that just reminds you of a positive story, or reminds you to go and look at your worksheet where you did your 7 stories, or where you've written your new empowering story. And I'll give you a couple little other neat ways to remember, besides the obvious of having something popping up in your calendar. For instance, one of my like I said, my men's group group coaching, he has endeavored to be a better father. He's a great dad, but he wants to really be aces. And so one of the things that he did was he changed all his passwords to his affirmation, which is, I am a great dad. That's what he did. So every day when he types in his password on his computer multiple times a day, he's reminding himself of what his mission is really. He's not saying, I'm already a great dad. He's saying, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to continue to be, I guess is the way to say it. But here's another one. Because we're all familiar with having stickies all over the place to remind us of things. Okay, maybe do one sticky, all right, for a new story. But here's a cool way. Think of a tree outside your home. There's a tree actually behind me that I can't see from where I sit here. It's a gorgeous, I'm in San Diego, gorgeous palm tree. It's just like 20 stories tall, and it's just astounding. And I associate that tree with a particular theme that I have in my brain. I don't need to go into that, but if you were to, identify that favorite tree, and it could be a rose bush or it could be a fire hydrant, um, and just associate that with a positive story of yours, right? Say my group coaching client's story of I'm a great dad, or my other group coaching client who's like, I am someone who lives my value of me showing up for me. What a powerful thing to do. Every time you see that tree, if you associated that with that tree, you will think of that when you see the tree. Simple thing, powerful thing.
It's
So, and,
genius. I love that.
sorry,
That's
yeah,
genius. I've never
simple
heard
thing,
that
yeah.
before.
Another
Yeah,
thing,
that's
another thing
brilliant.
you can do real quick, and this comes from our mentor at ADCA, where you and I trained, David Work. He has some sort of symbolic things that are symbols of his values on his desk. So he's got like a lion and a castle and something else I've forgotten. But you can do that too. If there is something in your home that you can associate with an empowering story or one of your values. Like one of my values is risk taking. So I have photos of me on my motorcycle doing 117 miles an hour, and I'm not joking, to remind me that one of my values is risk taking. So consider that. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, no, you didn't. I love that. I love everything you said there. Because they are really they're realistic day-to-day thing ways we can build this into our life. So I really did like what you said about how we hear these ideas, especially as ADHD. So we hear a lot of stuff, we go on a lot of courses, read a lot of books and things, but then it's the implementing, isn't it? So you're giving some real ways to do that, and I just think that's amazing. Because I like the things like it's reminding me a bit of things like, have you heard of the ta-da list instead of the to-do list?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
ta-da. So like
yeah,
actually maybe a habit of like once a day, or like just write a couple of things out that you did that weren't on your to-do list, because we know as ADHDs we do a lot of stuff, we don't acknowledge those things. So it's all those little things, ways to build that self-esteem into with daily things, and just pick
yeah.
one. You don't have to do them all. It's like pick one and do that. And then again, our brains do love novelty, don't they? So when we get bored of that, we could do a different one. So I think
Agreed,
it's great.
agreed. Switch it up.
Yeah. Well, Alan, this has been amazing. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish to our conversation?
I just want to reiterate that this is not woo woo stuff. With all due respect to woo woo, this is not rah rah cheerleading. These two exercises are based in research and basic common sense and neuroscience even. And so get fired up about it. If you're sort of tired of hearing the same stories, hearing that dummy, I'm so glad that your story echoes mine with the dummy, the stupid. Everyone's got something like this. All of you out there, my heart goes out to you, and I'm rooting for you. Get fired up to take some action on this and see if you can create some better stories for yourself that are true stories that will come to mind more quickly than the negative ones do, which are kind of automatic, and we can make them less automatic by populating our brains with more positive stories.
Thank you. I really feel this is a powerful thing for my audience to hear. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for you to come and share, Alan. Thank you so much. And I will see you soon, Alan. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you for having me.